I want to tell you a story about Bitcoin. In 2010, the early days of Bitcoin, a guy in Florida wanted to buy some pizza. He didn't have any money, so he went into a chat room and he said he'd send someone 10,000 Bitcoin if they bought him 2 pizzas from Papa John's, and someone took the offer. It's a story he later told on 60 Minutes.
You paid 10,000 Bitcoin for 1 pizza?
It was 2 pizzas, actually.
Oh, you got 2 pizzas out of it.
And, I mean, you know, maybe the person spent $30, $40, something like that.
What would it be worth today?
$80 million, I don't know.
That story was from 2019. Today, in 2025, those 2 pizzas are worth close to $900 million. And everyone is asking themselves if it's time they get a slice of the pie. So tonight, let's go in depth on why lawmakers may start investing North Carolina tax dollars in Bitcoin. So there is a bill that could invest up to 10% of the state's pension, billions of dollars, in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. A viewer named Deborah asked me a question that I'm betting lots of you have. What the heck is Bitcoin? It's a great place to start. Most people don't understand it, coincidentally, including our lawmakers. They asked similar questions when the idea first came up earlier this month. During the debate, Representative Carla Cunningham from Mecklenburg County said, "I want to understand it, but I guarantee you 90% of us in this room don't understand it." Understanding is a pillar of smart investing. Warren Buffett famously said, "Never invest in a business you cannot understand." But I guess our lawmakers haven't gotten to that page of their quote of the day calendar yet, because the very next day they reversed their stance and they decided to move ahead with that bill to invest state dollars in crypto. They decided to trust this man to understand the things they do not. Brad Briner. He's the newly elected state treasurer. He's new to public office, but a whiz in finance, and he thinks Bitcoin is worth the gamble. His resume is impressive. Most recently, he managed the personal and philanthropic wealth of one of the world's richest people, Michael Bloomberg. I sat down with Briner last week to hear more about this Bitcoin plan. Does it worry you that so few people understand Bitcoin, including the very people who we elected to potentially give you the authority to invest in it?
In the end, I've got a fiduciary duty to the state and to the assets of the pension plan to do what is right by them, and that is going to be measured in hindsight. And I know that. That's part of the deal when you sign up for jobs like this. So I've got to be thoughtful about what we allocate to, how much we allocate to them. We are not putting 10% of the pension fund in anything except maybe U.S. Treasuries. So there's a percentage that maybe makes more sense than 10% and something lower than that.
Now, I'm going to give you a lot more of that interview with Briner a little later this week. But before we discuss Bitcoin's role in the portfolio, let's discuss what Bitcoin even is. So technically, it's a cryptocurrency, but let's simplify that. First, it's a currency, a digital currency. You can't physically hold it or touch it, but it is money. You can trade your dollars for Bitcoin the same way you can trade your dollars for the British pound or the Japanese yen. And most people do this on apps like Coinbase or Cash App, PayPal or Robinhood. You connect your bank info and then you trade dollars for Bitcoin. And once you have that Bitcoin in your account, you can spend it on everything from travel to meatball subs. Companies like Microsoft, Overstock, Expedia, even Subway have accepted Bitcoin. But clearly, there are some limitations. I mean, you can't use cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin at the grocery store or to pay your taxes, which is why most investors don't really treat Bitcoin like a currency. They treat it like a commodity, like gold. Maybe you've seen this headline. The U.S. is creating a Bitcoin reserve, described by the White House as a digital Fort Knox. Hong Kong, Germany, the U.K., Russia, Brazil, Poland, North Korea, all making similar moves. And in the U.S., North Carolina is among 24 other states considering this type of investment. But that still doesn't explain the why, does it? Why it's being treated and hoarded like gold. And this is where it can get a little abstract. You see, when Bitcoin was created, it was designed to have a finite amount, a mathematical equation that ends with 21 million Bitcoin. That's it. That's all there will ever be. And that means it's scarce. And when something is scarce, like gold, we find it valuable. But again, why? And come to think of it, why is gold valuable? Well, very simply, because we believe it is. The same way we believe the dollar is. It's a story we tell ourselves, and as long as we all believe it, it's true. But there is a difference. The story of Bitcoin is much different than the story of the dollar, and it's because the story of the dollar is backed by the U.S. government. For instance, in 2008, when the housing market crashed, the government protected our dollar and kept us out of a depression. Yeah, the solution wasn't perfect, but it did keep us out of tent cities and bread lines. There are lots of examples like this. But Bitcoin doesn't work that way. It's decentralized. That means that there is no bank, no fees, no transaction limits. There's no country, institution, or person in charge. There's also no safety net. If it crashes, and that money is gone. I talked to a professor at NC State about the volatility.
So we've seen it go over $100,000 per Bitcoin. We've also seen it less than $20,000 for one Bitcoin. It's hard to imagine any other well-acquainted for stock that anybody holds that has seen quite the same fluctuation in Bitcoin.
To which you are saying, I just don't get it. Don't feel bad, okay? If you're thinking that way, it's fine, because the truth is, no one fully gets it. Take the fluctuation and massive growth. Investors will tell you to ignore these sometimes gigantic short-term ups and downs, and instead look at the long-term gains. And when you're looking at a chart like this, they're right. The problem is they can't really tell you why that is all happening. It's often easy to see why a stock goes up or down, or the value of the dollar, but with Bitcoin, they often don't know why it moves the way it does. They don't know really why it's grown the way it has, or how much it will grow. Simply, no one fully understands what this investment is or what it will become. Not even this guy.
By extending that argument, there are thousands of stocks that I should never own, because I don't really understand what the companies do. I don't really understand how quantum computing works. I don't really understand the nuts and bolts of AI. And so I think it's an unfair test to an asset to say I have to perfectly understand how it works to own it. I do need to be cautious with it. I do need to be careful with its volatility. I need to have a role for it and a reason to own it. This is not really about Bitcoin. It's about the appropriate level of risk and return for the pension system.
Okay, what do you think? Should we call it there? Is that enough? Should I explain how the blockchain works and what that is? I can hear you pleading for mercy, so I'll spare you. In the meantime, let me know what your questions are on this topic. I have a lot more from Brad Briner. I'm putting it together right now. Let me know what you're interested in here, what I haven't answered that you're curious about. Tell me what is on your mind, and we will go in depth.